Hey guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete. Joining in a second, as always, by my co host, Brian. Guys, we're back here, week number 10. Yeah, that's how far we are into the NFL season right now. Crazy every single season. Of course, we love it. That's why we do this podcast. That's why you're watching it right now. But it is always crazy to me how fast the season progresses. A sport that's relatively played, majority of its games once a week goes faster, I feel like, than any other sport that plays significantly more games. It's just wild, but I enjoy the time. It's why the NFL will probably expand to an 18th game at some point. And man, these Thursday night games specifically this season have been great. In the past, we've definitely criticized, everyone in media criticized how bad Thursday night games were. You get a lot of Jacksonville, Tennessee games. Now, getting two star quarterbacks on a Thursday night playing in a shootout, just incredible stuff. Last week we had a great game. The week before that, Rams Vikings was a game really awesome. So, Brian, with all that said, welcome you in. How's your week been going, man? Are you excited to jump in here? Week number 10. We're going to be talking all about that.
Oh, of course, as we're 1 minute away from striking the midnight hour as of
Yeah,
this recording,
it's
so a
late.
bit of a late night, but we've got the energy, and I think it helps that we got a great game to break down from last night. You mentioned the Thursday night games have been really good. I'm kind of liking actually the Amazon routine where I settle in Thursday night and
Yeah,
pull it up online. Like it doesn't bother me at
yeah,
the Amazon
yeah.
package.
No,
So
not me either.
I think, yeah, I think it's been a positive all the way around, and obviously, we got a great game to dig right into.
What I love too is that it's so, of course you have to pay for the service, right? That goes without saying. But I feel like many people have Amazon Prime. Like it just feels like that's kind of the ubiquitous streaming service, or at least package just for the shipping part of it that everybody has or most people have. And then you get that added bonus of Amazon Prime. And I like that you could go on the next day or whenever you want and can rewatch the entire game the exact way, even the commercials the exact way that it was shown the night before. It makes things where, not everybody has time every single week. I know I don't have time every single week to sit down and watch a full Thursday night game. Well, the next day I could go back and watch the entire game, get all the broadcast breakdown, all the gameplay. I love that about that. It's something that I feel like with NFL Ticket, with the NFL Premium Pass or Plus or whatever it's called now, it's a significantly higher bar that you have to pay into that pass per season. Where Amazon, what are you paying? I think it's something like 12 or 13.99 a month. I mean, it's completely worth it for what you're getting from the package side and then of course the game side. So yeah, totally agree with that. And what a game to break down. Let's get into it, Brian. The Baltimore Ravens defeat the Cincinnati Bengals 35 to 34, where this game was not only filled with a light show offensively from both teams, massive defensive gaffes, penalties that were not only bad, but then also questionable ones that refs may or may not have called, which seems like we've been talking about that all season long in particular. And you get these standalone games, it really highlights and is shown. It kind of shows all the warts of the NFL officiating crew this season. But Brian, let's kind of do the end and let's work our way backwards in this game. We'll jump right to the end. The game comes down to the Ravens up by 7. They just drove the field under 2 minutes. A touchdown for Lamar to Rashad Bateman. It was kind of like a little, only I feel like Lamar and maybe Mahomes could do this in the league. This like little jump pass, awkward
Yeah.
throw, but he makes it look easy. Touchdown, hits Bateman, and it wasn't like the easiest thing. He was getting it over a couple defenders, and yet by the time Bateman gets the ball, it looks like he's wide open. Like that's what Lamar can do. Joe Burrow having a fantastic season, having a great night, lighting it up, drives his team down the field. Of course, he's aided by several, I think it was 4 or 5 Ravens penalties, personal fouls, roughing the passers, holding, all of these things I think accounted for like 60 yards on the final drive. They get down the field, they score the touchdown, Bry, and then becomes the question, what do you do? You're on the road, right? We just saw this on Monday night. Chiefs Bucks. Do you go for two? Do you go for the extra point and you play for overtime? and they played for two exactly like I would have done with the Bucks game. The Bucks, it's actually funny, within about 3.5 days, we got the exact same thing played out two entirely different ways, and the road team losing in both instances. They go for two. There's a questionable call there. It looks like he was held. And then you have, a hit to Burrow there, a hand to the face going on. There was a million things going on in the play. None of it was called, and the pass goes incomplete, and the Ravens end up stealing this game. Or I don't even want to say stealing. I want to say getting out on top in kind of this battle of offensive juggernauts. They win it. They sweep the season series, and now the Bengals have now fallen to 4-6. The Ravens improved to 7-3. Right, what do you think of that kind of final drive and that final play of the game? And I guess a second question to that: where are the Bengals at? We've been talking about them a lot this season. It's like they give these offensive firepower shows where on one end you go, is Joe Burrow in the MVP conversation? And on the other end, it's like, how could he be? This team's 2 games below 500. So I kind of threw a lot at you there. What's all your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a lot to get to there, but I mean, I think you start with the 2 point play and just the decision to go for it. I mean, I have to say it was a sound decision
Me too.
because you look at the way the game was playing out, the offenses were dominating. I mean, the defenses could not make any stops in that second half. Now, the way the game started, there wasn't so many points early on. It was like 7-7 midway through the second quarter.
Yeah.
But then the offenses found their rhythm, and it was just up and down the field. They were scoring at will. They were scoring on every drive, it felt like. Of course, Cincinnati had a two-touchdown lead earlier in this game that
Third
they
quarter.
let get away. Right, but you go to the end, and I think it was the right call. You try to steal it right there. Now that doesn't guarantee a win because you're
Mm,
still going to give the ball back to the Ravens with what 30 something seconds left,
yeah.
and they still have a couple of timeouts in their pocket. And with the way Cincinnati was defending, I don't count Lamar and company out from driving and getting into
Me
Justin
either.
Tucker's field goal. So but I think you had to do that because, if you go to overtime there and the Ravens get the ball, you just know you're not stopping them.
Yeah. It's
So
lights out.
you got, right, you got to play for the win there. And, it was a game where both offenses were just so explosive and dynamic. I mean, I give Cincinnati a tremendous amount of credit because they fall behind right after the touchdown of Mark Andrews, and then Cincinnati gets the ball back, and one play to Jamar Chase, who takes
This
it the
guy's
length of the
incredible.
field. How about the game this guy had?
It's
I mean,
incredible
Chase,
stuff.
264 yards and three touchdowns. I mean, I guess you have to wonder on the 2 point play, the ball wasn't going in his direction. I mean, I couldn't see if he was like doubled or
He
tripled. I mean, from the Ravens
on
standpoint, you have to.
on that play he was covered, but after the game, they asked him about it and he said, "Oh, I'm always open." My thing is, and I saw a lot of people talk about this and I 100% agreed. Okay, he's not open on that play, but the play was never designed for him. You have to design the play for Jamar Chase. He's been destroying them. Why would you not go to your best offensive player?
Right, and especially because they still don't have T. Higgins in the lineup. So, their second leading receiver was the running back Chase Brown. Otherwise, you're
Yep.
looking at, the Tanner Hudsons and Mike Gesicki's. So it was the Chase show, as it usually is, especially when T isn't on the field. But, for Cincinnati, they played two great games against the Ravens, and they have no wins to show for it.
Yeah.
And that is a big issue now. The 2 games under 500, and it's a team that I think will be dangerous because of their offense. Will keep them in games. Burrow's playing lights out, but this defense just isn't good enough. I mean, I don't think the Ravens defense is good enough right now to win a championship either. But for
Agree with that.
Cincinnati just to the playoffs, they need to play at a better level than they are, and it just hasn't been good enough. And I just feel like Burrow is under too much pressure right now. It would be nice if he got a call in his favor. I mean, how many,
Yeah.
we got 3 times had his face mask
Yeah.
held that they
I
didn't
thought it was
call.
ridiculous.
It's hard to believe, but now once again, you have a great game. where you get questionable officiating late, and it just keeps raising the question and the conversation about the officiating, which is aggravating because instead of talking about, the X's and O's and how great of a game it was, you have to talk about officiating, which is such a annoying topic of conversation that always seems to come up in the biggest games.
Yeah, I think you made the great point that even if they scored the 2 point conversion, there was no guarantee that the Ravens weren't going to drive down and kick a field goal. It's also, if they get the penalty call, one of them that could have been called on that play, there's no guarantee they again pick up the 2 point conversion. So that goes without saying, even though we said it anyway, but you have to give them the chance. And this is the argument where in the Vikings Rams game a couple weeks ago, I said, yes, that was 100% a penalty, should have been called. But the chances of the Vikings, the way they had played in the second half of that game, driving the entire field still another 80 yards, getting a touchdown and a 2 point conversion in a minute and a half, probably unlikely. Which I think they had one timeout at that point. Like it was probably unlikely. I'm not saying it's not possible. Justin Jefferson could have broke off one, but unlikely. In this, the ball would have been at what? The half-yard line. It's a lot more of a possibility that they can actually convert this. And it sucks that we're talking about the officiating. It sucks that we continually had to talk about just undisciplined, especially defense from both of these teams. I mean, the Ravens in this game, I think they had something like 11 penalties. They had 3 or 4 on that final drive. It's not good enough. It doesn't feel like either of these teams, if they make the playoffs, we imagine the Ravens are going to make the playoffs at 7-3. But they don't have those defenses, as you say. They're just the fall off of both of them, especially for the Ravens, has been something I feel like we haven't seen. I mean, they're a bottom 10 defense right now, and they were number one in most categories last year. We know they lost some players. We know that they obviously lost McDonald. He goes over to Seattle. But to have this far of a fall off, and then also to be undisciplined, which just feels very John Harbaugh like. It doesn't feel like typical Ravens culture, and you have this Ravens offense that I feel like is maybe playing at the highest cylinders we've seen in the Lamar era, which is crazy to say considering the guy has 2 MVPs, including a unanimous MVP in 2019. It's just sad to see that the defense can't even be middling. And that's the issue there. And,
Mhm.
I looked up the stats here. Chase had something like 457 yards, 5 touchdowns, and I think he had something like 21 catches in the 2 games he played the Ravens this year. I mean, that's insane. I mean, that's crazy. This guy. I understand he is one of the best receivers in football, right? For me, it's him and Justin Jefferson. There's no question there.
Uh,
I'd still probably put Justin Jefferson slightly ahead, but these guys are incredible. We see what they do. I don't understand how this guy isn't. Hell, I'll triple team this dude. I mean, I'm making the Chase Browns of the world or the Hudsons of the Bengals. I'm making them beat me. If they go off and they have 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, I'm like, we did all we could, right? I might be triple bracketing Chase at that rate. I might have a linebacker underneath kind of buzzing around, and I might have a safety and a corner on him. I'm gonna go. I'm never letting you get the ball. Like you're not going to beat me. And I just the undisciplinedness, the tackling on that 70-yard play, he just ran through the secondary like it was a knife through hot butter. It just doesn't feel like we've seen the characteristic AFC North teams out of these two competitors that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, well, and you hit on it too as far as the Ravens culture. When you think of the Ravens and the best teams that they've had over the years, you think about an imposing, intimidating defense. All the years with Ray Lewis, running the show, and Ed Reed, and Haloti Nada, and Terrell Suggs. And now you have a defense that is very beatable. I mean, more than beatable. And by the way, in this game, they lost the captain of the defense, Kyle Hamilton, the
Yep.
outstanding safety. Now, it doesn't sound like it's a long term injury, but even if he misses any time, that's a big problem because they just cannot cover opposing
No,
passing
they
games. I mean,
cannot.
they may have a little bit of luck against the run, some good players up front, but that secondary has just been giving up big plays entire season. And as good as Lamar has played, and I agree with you, I think this is the best he has played in his career, the best of his MVP seasons, assuming he wins a third, which
Yeah,
is,
he's insane
not
right
a
now.
foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
But I would have to put him as the front runner right now. They need the defense to be able to support them. I mean, right now you're talking about the matching up against the Chiefs. While the Chiefs might not be as good offensively, the Chiefs have a championship caliber
They do.
defense. The Ravens don't. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to in January football.
We know in January football as well, it, even though we'll be talking about officiating again, it feels like you play more physical. They let a lot of things go more in playoff football, just like it is across all sports. And also, too, we just know these games, the magnitude of them, it gets tighter. And we've seen, I don't want to go down this road because I think Lamar gets disrespected in a lot of regards, but it's undeniable his playoff success has not been there. It just, his worst performances are always in these playoff games, especially in the high pressure moments and especially against teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they're the bugaboo kind of for everybody across the league. But the Ravens have struggled in that regard. And I want to focus more now on the regular season. But of course, you have to look to an eye to the postseason. This defense has to be shaped up by then. If it is not even in the 19 to 20 area and it stays in that bottom 10, maybe even goes and slides to the bottom 5, I mean, Brian, there's a chance, even if they had a bye, which they're not going to probably get, they can lose in a wild card round, right? Like it's possible. You go against one of these high flying offenses. Hell, if they cross Cincinnati in the playoffs, who's to say it's very hard to beat a team 3 times in one season? Who's to say Cincinnati couldn't get them? I totally think they could. This is an issue. They have to go back to the drawing board, get down on the penalties, get kind of tightened up on the defense, even be somewhat okay. I don't know. It's tough to see Lamar right now on pace for like a 41 touchdown, 3 interception season. Incredible right now the pace he's on. We know
Yeah.
the pace of Derrick Henry last night. Had another touchdown. Had a touchdown in every single game this season. Is just below the 2,000-yard pace mark of what he's on. You can have 2 MVP candidates, probably top 3, top 4 finishers, and hell, we're talking about a team that could be bounced out in the wild card round.
Yeah, and I think a big factor, you mentioned the name Mike McDonald, who was very successful as the defensive coordinator. He leaves to get a head coaching job in Seattle, and you thrust a rookie defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, we remember as a
Yeah.
player with the Ravens,
Yep.
years ago. But I don't know if he's in over his head, if the talent is lacking, but
It's a bit of both.
it's not adding up to a winning formula right now, and they're gonna have to find a way. Look, they don't have to be special. They don't have to be the Ravens like I referenced of the past. They just have to be, decent and not giving up big plays left and right like they are. And if they can find a way to just be average, I feel like this is a team that I give a chance to win the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree with that. On the other side of it, before we get off this game, like I don't want to keep harping on it as I have all season with the Bengals because that offense is so impressive. But it's just, you have to wonder about the Bengals. Not even front office, the ownership, right? Like, are they going to pay Chase this season? They'd be insane if they don't. They're going to lose Higgins. They have lost talent on this team. We talked a couple weeks ago. I proposed the trade of cost you nothing to get Tyler Boyd back off Tennessee. He's just rotting over there. They don't make that move. It just seems like they are cheap in all angles. And then, they're sitting at 4-6, Brian. At some point, people are going to have to get off the bandwagon of thinking this team is going to be a playoff team, never mind a championship caliber team. There are people in there in the media, and if you watch the big networks, you know some of them that cannot quit this team. The reality is, Bry, even though I love watching Joe Burrow play, knock on wood, I'm glad he's been relatively healthy this season, has gotten back to the player that we love watching. That's awesome. They're 4-6. Here's their next game. The Chargers. They could easily lose that game. They go into a bye, come out and play the Steelers, where, we know Joe has not played the AFC North well, and the Steelers will look good this season. The Cowboys could be a win, but we don't know. It's not like the Bengals have played great, even in the wins against bad teams. Titans, Browns, Broncos, and they finish out with the Steelers. There's no guaranteed way they're going to go on some run here at the end of the season, given that I feel like they have this kind of identity this season where they can lose to just about anyone and still now 0-5, I believe it is, against winning teams above 500. They haven't beaten a winning team all season. That to me is a clear and obvious recipe. This team's not making the playoffs.
No, I agree. I mean, look, Burrow is going to keep them in games, especially with the way he's played, but this defense just isn't good enough. And the offense, while it's been good at times, it's just not complete enough. They don't have a good enough running game. I mean,
Yeah.
Chase Brown has showed signs here and there, but not anything consistent. They traded for Khalil Herbert from the Bears just
Yeah,
because
you
they
see
needed
his
another
first play of the
body.
game. He's dropping the ball on the
Fumble.
first play of the game and it almost looked like a fumble.
Yeah, so that, and then he didn't see the field the rest of the
Nope.
game. So he might be in the doghouse. We've well documented T. Higgins and his host of injuries. It just always seems like he's dealing with something. They just don't have enough there right now. It's been a disappointing season. The defense has never come around. I mean, Lou Anarumo has always gotten a lot of credit as a defensive coordinator, but this year it just hasn't been good enough. And I agree with you. I think right now they're going to be left on the outside looking in.
Yeah, it's just been it's I've praised him in the past before on the show, Lou Anarumo, but it's also just been attrition, right? I mean, they've lost players, they've lost staff members, and when you don't pay people, Brian, imagine right now. I'd say, hell, I'll say maybe an extra win, maybe two. They just paid Joe Mixon this offseason. Look what he's doing in Houston right now. They have him on this offense right now, have a consistent, dangerous running game, and you have Chase Brown coming out as kind of an option third down back, a threat in the receiving game. That's even another element to this offense because, you know, yes, we talked about the defense, but let's just say, hey, the defense is going to be as bad as they've been. Well, you got to score more points. You don't think if they had Joe Mixon, they could have beaten the Patriots week one, right? Like, that's one win right there. And hell, this team is 5-5, and they're fully in the mix for those last two wild card spots in the AFC. I just think the door I'm not fully closing because the AFC, the bottom of the AFC, is so terrible, but it is fast approaching to completely shutting on their season. And another night where they come up just short, in this case, by 1 point. Brian, let's jump back to some games from last week. Week 9, we talked about last week, had a lot of bad teams matching up against each other. I think that was fair to say, but I got to go to this. It's just, I hate to talk about them because everybody talks about them, but let's go to the Dallas Atlanta game. Atlanta wins 27-21, and, more, it was kind of a milk toast game. I don't think Atlanta did anything that like blew me away. Drake London gets this great touchdown catch. It hurts his hip. He's out the rest of the game. But they stayed and played consistent, level-headed football. And Brian, we talked about it. We were on this where we talked at the
Yeah.
beginning of the season. The Dallas Cowboys were not going to be a playoff team, but I think we said, they'll be 8-9, 9-8, but they're not going to make the playoffs. Hell, Brian, the way they're going right now, they might finish in the top 6 in draft picks right now. This team is falling fast. Now you have the injury with Dak Prescott, where he is not officially, as of this moment of recording, been put on the IR, but that has been flirted. It looks like that hamstring injury is bad. It's reported that, I don't know the medical term, I don't have it off the top of my head, but basically a part of the hamstring muscle has pulled off the bone. Okay, so that is a super serious injury to his hamstring. I think he is going to be out a number of weeks, and now they've turned to Cooper Rush, and I know a lot of people want to go out. 2 years ago, he went 4-1, he could keep this team afloat. That Cowboys team, significantly better than the one that stands before them today. And in this game, too, kind of an AC joint shoulder injury happens to CeeDee Lamb. Is he 100% healthy if he even plays this week? They are falling fast, Brian. That doesn't obviously go without mentioning Parsons. DeMarcus Lawrence has been out. What do you make of the Cowboys in this season that is quickly spiraling?
Yeah, well, what I make is that you and I were onto something when in our preview
Yeah,
show we were talking about how this was not going to be a playoff team, but we are the same two people who had a sliver of hope here and picked them to win this game in
we did.
Atlanta, and that did not work out. But yeah, now you got all sorts of problems. I mean, now you got Dak out, and I've seen reports of like 6 to 8 weeks he could be out.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're talking potentially the rest of the season. It may require surgery. And Cooper Rush, it's fair to say, is probably one of the better backups in the league. I mean, a few years ago when he did get the starting job when Dak was out, like you said, he went 4-1. I think he's like 5 or 6-1 when he started. So he's won games, but you got the Eagles this week. That's obviously not going to be easy. And the one positive is that Micah Parsons is supposed to be back for this game, so that's a huge boost to a defense that just needs any help it can get. I mean, it has just not been good to say the least. CD Lamb, I think, has survived the injury scare. Looks like he's going to be out there, but I mean, the issues go on and on. This team has not been able to run the football all
No.
season. You got this disciplinary thing now with Ezekiel Elliott. Not that it's a huge deal because the guy's a
It's a
non-factor
distraction.
anyway.
That's what it is.
Right. I mean, I didn't understand why they brought him back.
Because he's Dak's best
Frankly, I
friend,
guess.
and he's cheap.
Oh, I guess there you go.
It's those
And
two
and then
factors.
they go and they sign old Dalvin Cook and plop him on the practice squad.
Yep.
So I mean, their idea for boosting this backfield was just poor. I mean, there's no other word for it. You got Rico Dowdle. I mean, it's just not a good backfield
No.
whatsoever. They haven't run the ball well at all. And then, like receiving wise, last year one of the things that really clicked for them. Of course, CD had his typical great year, but they had other complementary parts. Like there was a stretch where Brandon Cooks was a legitimate
Yep.
threat as the number two receiver. They have not had that number two weapon at all. I
No.
mean, Jalen Tolbert has been like the second best receiver on the team.
Yeah. Him or
Ferguson
Jake
is
Ferguson.
fine at tight end,
Yeah.
right? But they don't have enough ways to beat you right now.
No.
The defense is not physical. I mean, I've seen experts call them soft. It's probably a good word for it. I mean, you look at some of the games they've had against Detroit, they've just gotten run over. And I know they haven't had Parsons, but it still just has been very weak. So yeah, it's just been a very poor season for the Cowboys, who are always under the microscope. They went and gave Dak the huge deal right
Mm-hmm.
before week 1. I kind of thought they were just going to play out this
I thought
season
so too.
and frankly let him walk. And it just feels like they're not all in sync here. Like what exactly is the plan? Are you moving on from you're not moving on from Dak, you just signed him. So you're gonna bring in a new coach because McCarthy's probably gonna be at the door.
Yep.
It starts with Jerry Jones, as we all know, but it's just a dysfunctional mess. That's what it is. They last season was really their year to make noise. They had the playoff disappointment, they were out of there. And this year has just, nothing's gone right.
It's really the last two seasons, right, that they had the flameouts. They had a chance in 22 as well. They couldn't get it done. We have to start broaching this topic, and I don't think this is hyperbole. I don't think I'm overreacting in the moment because we called this in the beginning of the season. We have to start considering the Dallas Cowboys as an overall dysfunctional franchise. That's just the bottom line. Now, are they the bottom of the league of the Jets or the Bears or the Panthers or hell, the Saints these days? No. But they're that like next tier above. They're bad. And this goes obviously, as you say, as everybody knows, from the top of Jerry Jones and then I guess to some degree Stephen Jones, even though he's still answering to his father. What are they doing? What is the plan, right? They've let talent walk out the door over the last couple of years. They've paid the wrong guys. They've paid guys too early, too late, too much money.
Mm-hmm.
And then they make these like weird moves. Like look at this week at the trade deadline. They go get Jonathan Mingo from the Panthers. They give up a 4th-round pick for a guy that, I'm sorry, no offense to him, I don't think is worth a 4th-round pick considering the team. The one thing you can give the Cowboys is they've drafted very well, especially in the late rounds. That 4th-round pick is valuable. You just threw that away on a guy that's really not going to move the needle, especially with a backup quarterback in Cooper Rush that, I mean, he's limited. Let's just be real. And then you had Dak on top of that when he was in there, was having a very bad season. CD Lamb has clearly been frustrated. He's the only real weapon on this offense. You have a fastly over the last number of years, and you really see it this year, aging offensive line, an expensive player in Zach Martin that they could have moved at the deadline here, did not. And then a backfield that everybody who was high on the Cowboys for whatever reason wanted to underplay. Like all of a sudden, it didn't matter that guys like an old Zeke or a Rico Dow were literally. Run games matter. This has been the year where we've seen a resurgence of running games. Derrick Henry's, the Joe Mixons. Look at the effect no Christian McCaffrey's had on the Niners. Running backs have meant something this season, and going into it with zero plan is reckless and it's flat stupid. And you can't make statements, Jerry Jones, in the offseason saying we're all in and then do the exact opposite of all in. And the CeeDee Lamb stuff and Parsons, the contract issues there, then I have no idea why they paid Dak the day of the first game. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous. It's almost like Jerry balked in that moment. I just don't know what's going on. And they are a dysfunctional team. They might not be the worst in the league, but they're right above that, Brian. We have to start having that conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Cowboy fans who are like, yeah, we've been down this road for so many years, and they know how dysfunctional it's been. And you talk about like the contract issues, like CeeDee Lamb, you have your star receiver. If you were really committed, you get that deal done
Yep.
as soon as possible. Instead, they let it linger all through training camp when he sits out the preseason, and it gets done what, a couple weeks before the season starts,
Yep.
and it's like you're showing that you don't really have much conviction, and that's with the cases with a lot of these guys. And I feel like, I guess it's easy to say now, but I feel like would have been best for all parties if they moved on from Dak
Yep.
Prescott, because I feel like they reached a ceiling with how good they could be with Dak as the
100%.
quarterback. Look, we know what he is. He's a very good player, but you feel like he's gotten as far as he can with
Yep.
him. And look, maybe he would go somewhere else and have a successful run somewhere else. But I feel like it would have been best Dak and for the Cowboys both to move on. And instead, now they're kind of locked up with him
Yeah.
for who knows how long. And I just feel like it's going to continue to set them back. They're just going to keep going in this saga. You're going to have a new head coach, whether it's Bill Belichick or whoever it might be, and you're just going to keep repeating the same thing.
I mean, if you're Bill Belichick, why would you even want to come into this situation, right? You have a limited
I don't.
time. You have an overbearing owner. He's never going to pick somewhere like that. It's going to be a young coach that wants a shot. Would not be surprised if, the typical way it goes, right? When you hire offensive, the next coach is defensive and vice versa. You're going to hire a defensive head coach here is probably going to be the way to go, which is going to be a mistake. And you had a lame duck defensive coordinator in Mike Zimmer coming in on a 1 year deal. You didn't give an extension to Mike McCarthy, even though he had 3 straight 12 winning seasons before that. So you kind of give him, a last year lame duck, no future situation. It's just, and you lost Dan Quinn. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. They pushed Kellen Moore out the door because there's all those reports where you believe it or not that McCarthy was kind of threatened by him and all these things going on. There's always something going on. And hell, do they make a great story? Are they good for the news cycle or a podcast? Absolutely. But when it comes to the product on the field, they don't. And to also state the obvious before we get off this, the conversation about Dak is not only a ceiling, this guy's injury prone. He's hurt almost every single season. And Brian, these are major injuries a lot of the time now, where they're out multiple weeks. Hell, he could miss the rest of the season this year. He's at least going to miss a month. That is another element to it. You're not playing up to the standard that you are. Your standard is not even that high compared to the rest of the other quarterbacks in the league. And then you're always injured. It's just a recipe to be a top 6 pick, and where you could be in contention to pick a quarterback. Now, of course, you're not, and you're going to make some pick of maybe a star defensive player. And at the end of the day, how much is it going to move the needle for the Cowboys?
Yeah, and you're right. Dak has had a number of injuries. You remember the gruesome one he suffered
Yes.
against the Giants, so it was the lower leg,
Yeah, the ankle.
and yeah, the ankle. And I mean, he came back from that, had a couple great
He
seasons,
did.
probably the two best of his career after that kind of injury, but you wonder, how much you can sustain. And yeah, you just think back to week one, right? With the Cowboys, they blow out the Browns. It was like, wow, this team actually looks impressive. But instead, what you realize is that the Browns just weren't any good.
No.
But we were like hyping up that Cowboys defense. It was like Mike Zimmer taking over. Wow, look at this defense.
Yep.
And that was like the only good game they played the whole
Yeah.
season. I mean, they've been a disaster, and it's a sinking ship now. You don't have your starting quarterback in, and yeah, their season's done.
And we should have known too, because in that game, that was really a defensive special teams game. The offense wasn't really that good. So that should have been our kind of bellwether to be like, oop, there might be some trouble going on here. And we see it there. And I know we really focused on the Cowboys in that one and much the Falcons. But like I said, they played a solid game. Kirk Cousins has been solid this year. The Drake London injury doesn't look like it's serious. Bijan was, he had like 86 yards rushing. They did what they needed to do. I just find it fascinating before we get off this game. There's like this just incredible connection between Kirk Cousins and Darnell Mooney. Like, you would think with all these
Yeah.
weapons, he would have all connections with these guys. And it's just Darnell Mooney. What a pickup this has been. It's just like they know each other's brain pattern. Like, exactly where the ball is thrown, Mooney is there every time. It's just crazy to watch every week.
That's a good call because this is a guy, right, who was in Chicago with the Bears, and I feel like there were years where like fantasy projections were like you want this guy Darnell Mooney is
Yeah.
like a sleeper, and he just never worked
No.
out. It was like, well, I guess the projections were always wrong, and sometimes you find a new home, change of scenery, and it really works out. You get the connection with the veteran quarterback, and he really has produced at a high level. I mean, Drake London's had a very, very good season. Pitts has, he didn't have a good game last week, but
Yeah.
he's found it a little bit this season. But you're right, Mooney has been like that old reliable target for the veteran quarterback, and it's helped that offense a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this season he has over 80 yards, I think, in this game as well. And this season right now, I'm pulling up the stats. He's sitting at 588 yards. He's got 41 catches and he's got 5 touchdowns. I mean, he's on pace
Yeah.
probably for close to 1,000 yard season. He's played well. He's made spectacular catches. He's been the downfield threat. He's been the possession receiver. He's been whatever they needed. Kirk Cousins needs him to be. And I think we're seeing the separation, and I think it's more due to injuries than talent between the Bucks and the Falcons, and they look like they're running away with this division, which is what kind of many people thought would happen given all the talent they had. And it started off slow, and it is certainly picking up as the season goes on. Probably the other game, there's a number of games, of course, that we could touch on and go into. But honestly, I might shock you with this one. I want to jump to the Cardinals and the Bears. Just because on much like the Cowboys on the negative side of it, the Cardinals defeat the Bears 29-9. This game was not even remotely close. I mean, the Cardinals from the first quarter, you clearly saw, oh crap, they punched the Bears in the mouth. This game's over already. Like, you could just see it. You know, a team that I think in the Chicago Bears, we both had different opinions. I was very high on them, had them
Yeah.
making a wild card and making the playoffs, even winning a playoff game, I believe. I predicted. Now, at some point, Bry, you have to imagine this could spiral quickly for the Bears, and I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. Are they even going to be over 500? They'll probably fire Matt Eberflus at the end of the season, which is what they should have done at the end of last season. Caleb is getting beaten the crap at in these games, whether he plays good or bad. He had another bad game here. And the deteriorating relationship that's going on with DJ Moore after he just got paid as the highest paid player in Chicago Bears history. He just seems not in touch. I don't know if it's the coaching staff or Caleb or both, or he's just internally frustrated. A lot of weird things going on here. The answers they gave after, including DJ Moore, of like, oh, do you feel like Matt Eberflus has lost the locker room? And he's like, I mean, I would like to think that we wouldn't say that. Well, that doesn't give me confidence in that answer at all. Like that's a real weird answer to give to the media. There's a strange thing going on here in Chicago, and just as you think you could have hope, or I had hope in them, they feel like they just turn into the Jets of the NFC, where they're just dysfunctional. They're cheap, especially in Chicago, and they're not getting it done. And they're not protecting their young, potentially star quarterback. I mean, what do you think of the situation going on there?
Well, when I was following along with this game in the 4 o'clock window last week, the thought actually crossed my mind that, like, with the Bears dud, that this was going to be a topic that you wanted to address. So it's
There you
funny
go.
that you actually
You
brought it
know me
up.
well.
But yeah, I mean, how I felt about the team coming into the
Yep.
year, so to me, it's not entirely surprising. I mean, look, I think we're clearly seeing growing pains from the rookie quarterback. Caleb has had games where he's flashed and looked really good, but he's also had some underwhelming games. But yeah, I think they're going to have a new head coach, and I think it's got to be offensive mind.
Has to.
When you have the
Has to.
young quarterback, yeah, like whether it's Ben Johnson or somebody like that, these defensive guys with a young quarterback, it doesn't seem to be a good mix. And Eberflus, I don't think anybody really believes is that good of a head coach. Yeah, I mean, this was a dud of a performance. I mean, it wasn't exactly a game where Arizona lit it up from an offensive standpoint. I mean, Kyler Murray
No.
didn't throw a touchdown pass. He throws sub 200 yards, but
Yep.
kind of gashed him with the running game. James Conner continued a strong season. And yeah, I just don't think the Bears have enough right now, either side of the ball, and whether it's coaching, whether it's not quite enough talent, the disconnect between who should be your number one receiver and DJ Moore, like there's just a lot to be disappointed with. I mean, that the people who had high expectations are disappointed. For me, I just felt like needed to see more from a franchise that has been a perennial loser before I really bought stock into
It's
them.
fair.
And, they've kind of proven me right.
In the big play too with DJ Moore that talked about like, he kind of ran out of bounds on the play, kind of assisted by the DB, and of course once you're out of bounds you can't run back in, it'd be a penalty. So he kind of took himself out of Caleb Williams' kind of scramble play vision on one of the plays, but it was the way he walked off and went straight to the bench, and some people said he had kind of like this weird grin on his face, like it just doesn't feel, it feels a little toxic, it feels like there's tension, like it just doesn't feel right to a guy in DJ Moore. Before the season, I had a lot of respect in him as a player and a teammate, and I'm just wondering what's going on there. I'm not completely selling stock on him, but it's just a strange situation. The one thing is that I talked about even in the offseason is, they had that other extra first round pick in the top 10, right? Their own pick at number 9. And I said, they might go receiver, right? And they ended up doing that in Roma Dunze. But I said the smarter pick would be an offensive tackle. And we see how bad this offensive line has played, and I just don't understand teams every time do this. There's one thing if you pick an offensive lineman and you miss, right? The Jets did that kind of with Mekhi Becton, right? It happens all over the league. Years and years ago, the Rams picked number 2 overall Jason Smith. He was atrocious, was out of the league in a couple seasons, right? Things happen, but you have to take shots there. And when you have a young quarterback, the young quarterback's best friend, yeah, it could be the running back or a star wide receiver, but it's a dominant offensive line. That is what helps a quarterback not be frazzled, be confident in their throws, and have time to actually throw the ball down the field and learn and study defenses. And Chicago, yeah, some of these past seasons with Justin Fields, they've had like a 15-ish offensive line, like maybe 12, right? Like not atrocious, but not great. And this year they've fallen off even more. They're in the high 20s, I think Pro Football Focus has them right now. So that is a huge factor to why Caleb is getting knocked around here. He's a frazzled rookie. It happens. And then you have the coaching staff, and Shane Waldron is not a sexy offensive coordinator pick that kind of really moves the needle, right? A former Ram, a former Seahawk. He's not a guy that you would go, yeah, this guy's innovative, right? That's not the talk around the league. He's very vanilla. And then you pair him with Caleb Williams. I just think you can have this whole coaching staff fired at the end of the season, and you can have a rookie QB going into his second year, starting off with a brand new, coach, probably a first-time head coach. It just doesn't seem like they're giving him the best chance to succeed, and it's frustrating to watch.
Yeah, well, offensive line is huge for young quarterbacks. I mean, you can go back and look. Andrew Luck's career was ruined by poor
Yeah,
offensive line
yeah.
play for pretty much his entire career. I mean, even when he had his best years, he was getting hit, so often during games. And so, yeah, the Bears' offensive line clearly hasn't been good. When you look at the best teams in the league, common denominator very often is the best offensive lines
Yeah.
are the teams
Look at
that
the
win. You look
Lions.
at Detroit,
Yeah.
right? The Lions, the Ravens, the Eagles are three of the best offensive lines. They're three
Hmm.
of the better teams in the league. So you got to make sure you have those positions solidified, especially when you have a young quarterback, because if the infrastructure isn't in place, then the young quarterback doesn't progress the way you like to. You use a number one pick on him, got to put him in a position to be successful. And if you don't, like the Bears have in here in year one, then it sets you back.
I agree with that. And I want to look, just to be fair, look at the other side, right? The Cardinals, they're 5-4. They get this win here. I said in the first quarter, right? The game starts off with kind of a couple pair of punts each. I swear to God, the first touchdown at the end of the first quarter that the Cardinals scored, I know the game wasn't over at that point because the Bears got a couple field goals in the second quarter. That first touchdown, I was like, yeah, the game's over. Like, you just could tell, like, the body language going on. I was like, I don't even care if the Bears hang around for a little bit. This Cardinals team's punching them in the mouth, and they did right after that in the second quarter. And you know what? A guy I've criticized a lot in the past in Kyler Murray, and rightfully so, right? A number one overall pick, a guy that I feel like has really only had one good season, has not lived up to expectations, had a major injury. Well, this season, 67 completion percentage. He's thrown for 1,792 yards. He's 11 touchdowns, 3 picks, and then you add another, give or take 350 yards on the ground, right? Like, he has had a really solid season, and Jonathan Gannon, we said it last year. We gave them props last year. Even in games that they lost, they didn't have a good record. We were like, they play hard for this guy. Well, now they're seeing the results this season. They're actually seeing W's go on the board, and they're a threat, right? I don't think they're going to fade off in the NFC West. We know what, even though it was an injured Rams team, we saw in week 2 they annihilated them in Arizona. They're a threat. They beat the Niners already. I just think they are a team that we can't expect that, halfway through the season, they're going to fade down the stretch. I think if they stay healthy, they could easily make a playoff spot. Hell, they might even win this division. They deserve a lot of props, Jonathan Gannon, what he's done, and where I don't feel like this roster right now is super talented. Like, there are players at each level of the defense or maybe the offensive crew where you're like, all right, that's one guy that's pretty damn good. But as a unit, you don't look at them and go, man, there's studs everywhere. He has these guys playing up to the maximum potential that they could offer, and they deserve all the credit in the world right now.
I mean, remember the talk last year being going into the season how this team might not win a single game.
Yeah,
And they didn't win many, and it wasn't a good team. But especially early on, you could tell how much they were fighting and playing close games,
yeah,
and even against some good teams, not getting blown out. And that proved to be, kind of an omen, a good omen the next season where you get some of the pieces back in place. You get Kyler healthy again and producing well. You draft Marvin Harrison. I mean, it's been kind of an up and down season for him as a
yeah,
rookie, but you got other playmakers on the offense. McBride at tight end. Connor has been a very stabilizing presence in the running game.
for sure.
Very underrated player, solid player. And I think the defense has probably played better than you would have expected.
For sure.
I mean, I think we said before the year this was a team that probably would play a lot of shootouts where their offense would put up points, but their defense would give up, as many, if not more. And this game, the Bears, of course, aren't a great offense, but they hold them to 9 points.
Yeah.
They've had
They've
games where
been
they've played
relatively
pretty,
balanced this season. I'll give them that.
yeah. And, so I agree with you. Like in a division that's where the 49ers haven't played up to expectations, Seattle's kind of up and down. Your Rams, you were ready to give up on before the last couple of weeks. They've come around. So, anything's possible in this league, and they played well enough to believe in them, I think, going forward.
Yeah, and you look at like the common person, right? Like you look at the Cardinals defense, it's like, all right, this Buda Baker, he's a really good player. And like, how many other guys can you honestly name right now? And this is where you look at like, yes, I think a lot of people criticize hiring a defensive head coach just because the league is so rigged to offense, right? But if you are defensive, show drastic improvements on that side of the ball. Well, he's come in, Jonathan Gannon, and he's done exactly that. He took a lot of that heat a couple of years ago, right? For the Eagles Super Bowl loss, all that stuff that happened, he was kind of run out the door. I bet the Eagles last season would have really liked him. And yeah, they've stabilized it a little bit, but you can't say that this guy doesn't have genuine, like, supreme NFL defensive intelligence. Like, you could see it. And the fact that, he was a little quirky, he came in saying some weird stuff again in the press conferences when he first got hired. And either way, it's working. Behind closed doors, these guys are playing hard for him. They went through all the Kyler Call of Duty stuff and all these things. They've passed these moments. They play hard, and now the NFC West, all of a sudden in the last 2-3 weeks, has become like the NFC North, where all these teams are right in it. They're all viable. Maybe 2 or 3 of them could make the playoffs. I think it's going to be exciting down the stretch here for this next back half of the season, and the Cardinals deserve props for their role in it. Brian, let's switch over to some Week 10 picks. Of course, it's late here, so we're gonna jump into these picks. We talked about the Thursday night game, but Brian, we're back to some of Europe games. This time we're in Germany, 9:30 on Sunday. It's another rousing game for Germany. It's the Giants and the Panthers, two 2-7 teams playing each other. Yikes. This is one of those toss-up games because both of these teams are really bad. Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, you're overseas, so there's no home field advantage. I'm taking the Giants. I think pound for pound, they are the better team, especially on that defensive line. But hell, Brian, I wouldn't even be surprised if the Panthers win. Both of these teams are bad, and yeah, who you got?
Well, I picked Carolina last week, and that ended up working out for me as they had to come from behind win against the lowly Saints, while you get another lowly opponent here. And so, Germany is going to get to see two bad teams, so how lucky are they? But I'm a little surprised the Giants are a 6.5 point favorite on a
Wow.
neutral field, which would tell me that if this game were at MetLife, the odds makers would make the Giants like a 9.5 point favorite, which would be feel a little extreme.
Insane.
I mean, I know Carolina isn't good, but your two teams have the same record. I mean, you could make them a 4 point favorite, but it seems a little high. That said, I agree with you. I would not take Carolina to win back-to-back games. I think the Giants are better. I think they should be able to take advantage of what is an awful Carolina defense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's a game, excuse me, for Daniel Jones to, do anything, this is the game to do it with Malik Neighbors and company. So, yeah, it's obviously been a very trying year for both teams. The Giants, showed some signs early, I guess you could say, but it's kind of fallen off since. And, that's another lost season, but I do think they will win this one.
The 1 o'clock games kick off with the Patriots and the Bears. And again, we just talked about the Bears. They're only a couple wins above the Patriots, so we can't all of a sudden be like, oh, God, this team is so much better. However, I am picking Chicago. I just think you lose this game to the New England Patriots. I mean, you're in free fall. Chicago radio is killing the Bears come Monday morning. They got to win this game. They got to right the ship. They have actually a lot of tough games coming up on the back end of the schedule. They haven't played an NFC North opponent yet. So like that is a big thing coming down the stretch. You got to win the slam dunks, quote unquote. Give me the Bears to win this one, ugly or not. Give me the Bears.
Yeah, and these are the kind of games that they actually have done well at home against lesser teams. These are the kind of games that they've won. I agree with you. I'm taking the Bears. England, though, like you got to say, Drake May looks pretty good so far, right? Probably better than you would have thought. Like not on a very good team. You thought probably best served to sit for a while, but they threw him into the fire, and he's looked the part. So you got to give him credit. But I think the Bears bounce back after last week's dud at home. This is a game they need to win, and I'm going.
Yeah, if I'm the Patriots, the first thing I'm doing with my draft pick, a stud, if I can, left tackle, I'm getting, solidifying that line. The rest of the draft, oh my God, I'm getting playmakers everywhere. I mean, we see in college football, you could get second, third, fourth, fifth, hell, seventh round picks, and they can end up being stars. I'm doing that if I'm the Patriots. I'm going crazy on loading up that offense. The Bills and the Colts will meet at 1 o'clock here in Indianapolis, and the Colts, they make the highly controversial switch last week to Joe Flacco. They play a primetime against the Vikings, and it ends up being an absolute dud. Flacco's probably worst game that he's played in the last couple of years. I have no reason to pick the Colts right now. There are talented players here, but they're sinking fast. The Bills, when they play teams like this that are 500 or below, they just boat race them. So give me Buffalo all the way.
Yeah, I'm taking the Bills too. I mean, they kind of had to pull the game out last week. I thought they would
Yeah, good
handle
game.
Miami easily. It wound up being what, a 3-point game. So it was a close one. But yeah, the Colts. I mean, I have to believe they'll play better than they did last week. That was a game that they had
Yeah.
chances in Minnesota, and just seemed like every time they couldn't cash in. Not a good day for Flacco. Bills on the road, they've been very consistent. I mean, they're 7-2 this year. They really played very well both sides of the ball. I think they continue it with another win.
Vikings play the Jags, and yeah, two quarterbacks that if you had to say before the season who's gonna have a better season, Sam Darnold or Trevor Lawrence, I think you would have picked the number one overall pick. That has not been the case. The Jags, it's just every week I wonder, is this it for Doug Peterson? They showed some fight last week against the Eagles after going down 22-0. They have a chance at the end of the game, and Lawrence seals it with kind of a bad pick in the end zone. There's no way I could pick them right now, especially going against a good Vikings team. Give me Minnesota.
Well, news today as I channel my inner Adam Schefter. Trevor Lawrence came out with an injury and is going to be out this week. So Mac Jones
Yep.
is in. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Mac Jones. Then again, I don't have much in Trevor Lawrence.
No.
So either way, I think would be the Vikings here, who had the bounce back win that they needed to get at home after
Yep.
back-to-back defeats. Didn't look great in doing so, but I think the offense will get going better here against a Jags team that's been
Porous.
overmatched on the
Yeah.
defensive side. Yeah, Minnesota.
The Broncos and the Chiefs, and I'm going to take the Chiefs in this game. But Bry, this is a spot where I would not be shocked if Denver won. They got them last year. Denver has those divisional matchups get tight, and I don't think the Chiefs are going to go 17-0. I just don't think they're going to. They are going to get had. We say that every week at some point. So I'm picking the Chiefs, but I'm calling an audible here in the sense of this is a little bit of an upset alert segment right here. I think the Broncos do have a shot to win this game. I'm just taking the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Maybe this game's a mile high. I pick Denver, but give me the Chiefs in a close one.
Yeah, I don't see it. I feel like the Chiefs roll another double-digit victory here. I mean, Denver embarrassed last week in
Yeah,
Baltimore, 41-10. The Chiefs, like it feels like they're vulnerable, but
they never
somehow
are.
they're not. Like they just keep churning out wins.
Yeah.
I mean, last week it takes overtime in the Monday nighter against the Bucks. But look at the game Hopkins had, really gave that passing game
Mm-hmm.
a boost. Kareem Hunt has really done a great job in the running
Yeah.
game. So they haven't missed Pacheco as much as you may have thought they would. And the defense continues to play very well with a lot of unsung players on that side of the ball. So I just think they're going to keep rolling here. I mean, I don't think they're going to go 17-0. It feels like every week, okay, this is the week that they could lose, and nope, it's just another win. So
Yeah.
until it happens, I'm sticking with them.
They got had by on Christmas night by the Raiders last year. So anything could happen, and it just feels like a team coming off an embarrassing loss in the Broncos. They're going to be motivated to play well. The Chiefs pretty much play one-score games. That's what they do these days. So
Yeah.
I could see it happening, but I'm still picking the Chiefs. The Falcons and the Saints will play each other. I mean, there's no way I'm picking the Saints right now. Of course, the big story there that we can focus on for a minute, Dennis Allen fired this week. Not shocking, a team that I don't think we gave praises, but we weren't buying, we weren't sipping the Kool-Aid when they were 2-0 and scoring 93 points in the first 2 weeks, then proceeded to lose 7 games in a row, including to the awful Carolina Panthers last week, and that ended up sealing Dennis Allen's fate. he gets fired. I'm picking the Falcons in this game. But Bry, you think there's any chance the interim head coach bump this week that the Saints could beat the Falcons? And what is kind of your thoughts here on Dennis Allen getting the can?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always a chance, and it seems like a lot of times this is kind of a way to fire up a team and get them to play well. I mean, I wasn't buying it with the Jets the first game after Salah's exit,
I did.
and they lost to the Bills, so we know how that went. Um, as far as the firing, I'm not surprised. I mean, this year it was a little bit of a tough break in that he lost his starting quarterback Derek Carr for
Yeah,
a number of weeks. Now, I don't know how much different their fate would have been if Carr stayed healthy. I mean, early on that offense was humming. You had people talking like this was a legitimate team. They were
yep,
buying them after their 2 games. But we both felt like we needed to see more, and it completely fell off the rails. I don't think Dennis Allen is a particularly good coach. He had a very poor run with the
I
Raiders
agree with
years
that.
ago. It's not been very good with the Saints, but I felt like it was a little bit of a raw deal, and that it comes in a year where you're playing a backup quarterback the majority of your season. So it makes it a little tough. As far as the prediction, divisional game, so those can be unpredictable, but I am taking Atlanta. The Saints, I just think are kind of a beaten team at this point. Barr clearly is not, you know, the answer there. So I'm taking Atlanta to continue their winning ways on the road.
Yeah, I had to look it up. In his head coaching games, he's coached 79 head coaching games between the Raiders and the Saints. He was 26 and 53. I mean, it's awful.
So there
It's just awful. So,
you go.
and I'm actually shocked he lasted in New Orleans as long as he did. Yeah, seasons work out, injuries happen, right? Things don't happen, but go to week one, annihilated the Carolina Panthers. Go to last week, like that just shows what has happened to the team, regardless of injuries. Derek Carr did come back. You got to beat one of the worst
Yeah.
teams in the league. It's just you can't
Yeah.
lose to that team, even if it's a scrappy win and that ends up having him show the door. I don't know what New Orleans is in this weird spot because they're one of these teams in the league that is not good. They're very old, and also their salary cap is super tight. So they're going to be bad for a number of seasons, and whoever takes over this job in the long term has a very, very high climb, uphill battle to make. Darren Rizzi or Rizzi, however you say his name, the special teams coordinator, takes over as the interim head coach. Good luck to him. It's going to be a long season. The Niners play the Bucks in a game that normally I would have really been excited for, but the Niners trending in the healthy direction here. Christian McCaffrey reported to play in this game for the first time this season, in any game that he'll be playing. And the Bucks, we've talked at length about their injuries there. Baker has played well this season. There's only so much he can do. I think the Niners are going to win this one. Not as comfortably as you think. I think the Bucks are still scrappy, and the Niners, their ceiling is a little bit lower this season. But McCaffrey probably on a pitch count, just the morale that he'll bring and the plays that he can make, and even in a limited role, I think the Niners will win this one.
Yeah, this game is my version of your Broncos Chiefs, where
Okay,
you're higher on Denver's
upset alert.
chances. I'm higher on the Bucks' chances. Wouldn't rule out a victory. I'm gonna pick the 49ers, but this is a team that has been leaving a lot to be desired. When you watch them like, offensively, you feel like they should be better. Now Ayuk's down for the season. Of course, getting McCaffrey back is a huge boost, but
Yeah,
how healthy is he? Is he going to be typical Christian McCaffrey? I just feel like something is missing with this Niner team. I think they're going to win the game, but look, the Bucks gave the Chiefs all they could
they
handle
did.
without their weapons last week. They're at home here. Baker's had a very good season. I think it's going to be very close. I wouldn't rule out a Bucks win, but my pick will be San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a good game in that one. The final 1 o'clock game is the Steelers and the Commanders. And hell, who thought before the season that anyone would think this is a game of a 6-2 and a 7-2 team? That's a prime time, matchup here at a 1 o'clock window. I've gone back and forth on this pick, so I'll shoot it over to you. Who you got in this game, Brad?
Yeah, well, this is a team that I've been riding all season.
You
So
have.
until they slow down, I'm gonna keep riding them. The funny thing is had them as a playoff team finishing in second place, which even I felt was a little crazy, and yet I probably wasn't high enough on them because they just might win this division this year. But look, this is going to be a test. You're going against an elite defense that can have its way with
Oh
young
yeah.
quarterbacks. But Jaden Daniels, he feels like a different breed. I mean, I feel like nothing phases this guy. He's got all the confidence in the world right now, playing with a lot of confidence as a team. They're at home. I feel like they're going to keep it going. And we know they're going to be down their top running back, Robinson. Eckler's been a good addition there. I think they're going to keep winning. I'm taking Washington.
Yeah, this is a game I've gone back and forth on just because, like, I have really loved what Washington has done this season. And then, Pittsburgh, I predicted them to finish fourth in the AFC North. They have once again under Mike Tomlin, they've figured it out. They've used two quarterbacks. They're still winning. That offense just seems like it is clicking more under Russell Wilson. They just have a different element, a different down the field element that they did not have when Justin Fields is in there. Brian Robinson is a loss. It makes me think about playing another solid defense in the Bears a couple weeks ago. That Commanders offense did not look as good as they were. I did lean strongly in this game towards the Steelers, but ultimately I'm going to end up going with the Commanders here. I just think this game's in Pittsburgh. I'm definitely taking the Steelers, but I think it's a real kind of, a coin toss game. Gonna go back and forth. Very excited to kind of gauge where these two teams are, particularly the Commanders playing competition like this, playing at TJ Watt, but I think they're going to pull it out here and it's going to be a really exciting one. The 405 games where I kick off with the Titans and the Chargers. Yeah, I'm picking the Chargers. I mean, at this point, unless they play teams like the Patriots like they did last week, I have no reason to pick the Titans. The Chargers are a physical team. Herbert is having a great season with very limited weapons. That defense is, man, you want to talk about a defense that was so overrated in the last few years and never performed up to the level that they were paid. The complete opposite this season, Brian. This Chargers defense has been lights out this season. Give me them all the way.
Yeah, Jim Harbaugh has really made his stamp on this team early on, and yeah, they've been good. They look like a team that'll make the playoffs in the AFC. Stifled the Browns last week in a game that was a romp. Yeah, I'm taking them all the way here. The Titans, I think, are going to get Will Levis back, but whether it's Will Levis, whether it's Mason Rudolph, they're very limited in what they can
Oh
do.
yeah.
I'm taking the Chargers. Herbert is clearly playing better, especially over the last few weeks. So they're playing some good football, and now they're playing against a fairly weak team. So yeah, Chargers is the pick.
The 425 games kick off with the Jets and the Cardinals. And this one simply, listen, I just praised the Cardinals. I'm picking the Cardinals. Of course, I hope the Jets win because, the Rams win and the Cardinals lose. The Rams are in first place, right? Obvious. But I just think you can't pick with your heart. You got to pick with your head here. The Cardinals are just a better team. They're playing at home. There's a lot of hyperbole. I'm not going to roast Jets fans. Oh, we're going to go on a run and be 10-7, 11-6. Ridiculous. This team is bad. It's not happening. I know you agree with me in some regard. I'm interested to see your pick. I'm picking Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, I do not think by any stretch that they are going to run the table or make any kind of miraculous run here. But for whatever reason, I have a decent feeling about them
Okay.
in this game. And I feel like I haven't picked them much,
No.
so when a rare opportunity comes, I'm gonna go with him. I feel like there were a lot of good signs the previous week on the Thursday night in that second half of the offense really came together. Rodgers looking good. You got Garrett Wilson with Devontae, makes for a great combination at receiver. And the Cardinals, they've done some good things. They're on a little bit of a streak here, but I don't look at them as a really good team. I feel
No, I
like
wouldn't
this
say
is a
that.
spot where yeah, so to me, the Jets have to build on the momentum from last week, get another win, kind of creep closer to playoff contention, and I think they're going to play well enough. I feel like Rodgers is going to have a bit of a chip on his shoulder. You're going to get a good effort from their offense and win a tight game. I mean, I certainly expect it to be tight, but I got a sneaky feeling they're going to play well.
That's our first disagreement this week on picks, and I actually hope for once you're right and I'm wrong in this case because it would definitely help my team. The other 425 game is the Eagles and the Cowboys. And yeah, in years past, this is an amazing matchup, right? We love it every season. And honestly, the Cowboys usually get the best of the Eagles, but this game, I'm sorry. I don't care. Micah Parsons back, not. This game shouldn't be. Now, the Eagles sometimes do some ridiculous things. We saw that last week. How many times are you going to go for 2-point conversions and tush pushes and fourth downs when you absolutely did not need it? Like, that coaching staff is an absolute liability, especially Nick Sirianni. But pound for pound, the talent here right now with the injuries and the talent itself, there's a large discrepancy. Give me the Eagles all the way.
I definitely agree on every level there. I mean, last week they're in a game where they're cruising against the poor Jacksonville Jaguars. They're up 22-0, and by the fourth quarter, you have a game on your hands. You had a chance for Jacksonville to actually get the
Yeah.
lead late, and they had to hold on for dear life to win. So yeah, definitely some weird things that can go on coaching wise there. But yeah, I mean, you're facing Cooper Rush. I know he has a pretty good record as a starter, but it's very limited sampling. I have to believe the Eagles are gonna, take their stamp on this game and win handily.
The Sunday night game is the Lions and the Texans, 7-1 versus 6-3. This, I think, could be a really exciting matchup. The only issue is right now the Texans are just so injured. That offensive line has been porous this season. The Lions go out and make a trade at the trade deadline this week. Gets a Darius Smith, a real veteran pass rusher from the Browns. I think that really helps bolster what that defense is. I'm going Lions here. I just think we've seen this time and time again. The Lions can, I've said it weeks ago, they can morph into any team you need. High flying, physical, defensive, whatever it is, they can do it. In this game here, you're going against a really weak offensive line. Nico Collins, he might be set to play. They're kind of game time decision there. We know, obviously, Stephon Diggs for the rest of the season. I think it'll be a solid game, but the Lions are just too good right now. Unless they lay an egg, give them the Lions.
I agree with you. So our only disagreement is on the Jets Cardinals from the
Of
Sunday
course.
slate. But yeah, the Lions they've passed every test
Yeah.
this year. They've won, like you said, every kind of game that you can possibly play. They're really a very impressive team.
They
I
are.
mean, anyone who isn't buying this team as legitimate Super Bowl contender is just not watching closely enough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this team, top to bottom, can beat you in every possible way. You got a quarterback who's throwing up perfect passer ratings, it seems like every other week. You got a 1-2 punch in the backfield that can punch you in the mouth and that has speed that they can do everything and they can break out the trick play every now and again. You have a defense that is physical that can get after you even without their best player in Aiden Hutchinson and now has some reinforcements, as you said, via trade. That they've got all the pieces.
They do.
This is a team that really looks like it can win the whole thing. And I feel like they learned a lot from last year and the mishaps and the things that went wrong. You told me right now this team wins the Super Bowl. I'm not at all surprised. I think they're that good.
Yeah, they were my number one seed our pre-picks, our pick show. I just saw a lot of great things with this team, and it just seems like, I think that's a good point by you. Like, they have, particularly coaching, I think they've buttoned up some of those weird Dan Campbell decisions where he could kind of be a liability in the past. It seems like he is better with those. They are just, Ben Johnson coming back right now has been a great decision so far, and I love all the pieces that are clicking. And you know what? You want to talk about passing tests? Look at last week. They said, this is a dome team. Most of their games are outside, inside. You get them outside. Jared Goff, these guys, totally different. It was a monsoon in
Yep.
Green Bay last week, and they dominated the Packers. So you want to talk about a dome team can't play? This isn't any other dome team. This isn't like, the greatest show on turf, those Rams teams back in the day. This Lions team is physical. They'll punch you in the mouth whenever they want to. Rain, shine, snow, it does not matter. And I think that was just another test that they passed last week if they have to even go outdoors. But at this point, everything's going to run through Detroit at this moment. Probably the final game is the Monday night game on Veterans Day. The Dolphins visit the Rams. And this game right now, the last I check, is a 1 point Rams favorite game. It's basically a pick 'em. I'm taking the Rams in this game, but I'm not even saying this is just pessimistic. Don't be shocked if the Dolphins win this game. Under two of these last couple of games, they've looked great. They've lost right at the end in both games to the Cardinals and the Bills, respectively. And this Rams secondary can be had. Geno Smith was destroying them on the explosive plays last week in that game, and he got two of the fastest receivers in the league. They absolutely, if they burn a couple touchdowns, I could easily see the Dolphins winning. I'm just hoping this not only goes for the Rams because I'm a Rams fan, but we got to get some revenge. Remember, it's a few years ago, the Rams with Jared Goff riding high, going to a Dolphins team under Tua. He's a rookie. They should easily, you feel like they're the overwhelming favorite, and the Rams get punched in the mouth down in Miami. I think Van Ginkel at the time had a huge fumble return for a touchdown, absolutely dominated the kind of from the second quarter on, and they stole a key victory from the Rams that season. You got to get a little bit of revenge, a little bit of comeuppance here, and the Rams playing at home. Hopefully they pull it out. I'm taking them.
Yeah, I mean, secondary definitely vulnerable. I think you saw enough of Jackson Smith and Jigba last week,
God,
more
dude.
than you would have liked. But what a game he had. But yeah, I'm taking the Rams. I'm a little surprised it's only a 1 point favorite. I thought it would be, a
Dolphins have
three or
played well.
something like that. And they played well. Yeah, I mean, even against the Bills, like had that within a score. But I feel like the Rams, are playing better, kind of finding their groove these last couple of games. Definitely offensively, getting their pieces back healthy. Hopefully, Puka avoids
Yeah,
punching anybody, so he can play the whole game. And Cup does his thing, and Kyron Williams, and their full complement of weapons on offense. It should be a game with some fireworks.
it
Like
should be.
you mentioned, the Rams can give up some big plays, and the Dolphins have the personnel to do that. Could be some fireworks. I think the Rams are a little better. I think they'll come out on top.
And shout out to Marcus Robinson. I mean, the guy has
Yeah.
really blossomed into a solid number three receiver, of course. Catches the game winning touchdown in one of the wackiest games in overtime I've ever watched. I had no voice after last week. So much frustration. You want to talk about bad refereeing? Look at the Rams Seahawks last week for both sides. Horrible by the refs. I mean, just terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. I don't know how those guys have jobs. But yeah, guys, that will wrap up here. Week number 10 here on First and 10, of course, as we always do as well. The teams on the bye this week: Packers, Raiders, Browns, Seahawks. So if you were wondering why we didn't talk about those teams in length, that is why they're on the bye there. Brian, a weird kind of thing here, Brian. We picked one game differently the entire slate. So is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? That remains to be seen Sunday and Monday. We'll have to see how that plays out, guys. A lot of fun here. It's very late. It is almost 1:15 in the morning going on right now. So we're going to wrap up. So, of course, comment down below all your thoughts. We love talking to you. Appreciate all the support. Like the video, subscribe channel, share with your friends if you'd be so kind. Bry, any final thoughts before we get out of here tonight?
Well, I guess just quickly going through the picks, I realized that I actually picked both the New York teams to win,
That's rare.
Giants and Jets. I don't know if it has ever happened in our 5 year history on this show, to be honest with you. So see if it's a New York football weekend. I mean, certainly possible that the Giants can beat Carolina and the Jets Arizona, but New York football can always mess it up. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, betting on New York sports in general these days, not the smartest decision. I'm looking at you, New York Knicks. Not a great start to your season as well. So yeah, guys, that wraps us up here. We'll see you next time. And yeah, thank you for watching First and 10. See you next time. Bye bye.